You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, we do have a bunch of us here today, and I'll introduce everybody that is joining us. Today I got Lisa, the Occult Reject Mad Scientist. What is going on, Lisa? How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about this topic.
Yes.
Been hearing a lot about it in the news, so let's dive into it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And JJ Vance. How are you, sir?
Nick, greetings, sir. As always, I appreciate the invite. JJ Vance, host of Operation GCD, not the vice president. I'm super excited about this show. Great to meet you there, Ed. And
hey, thanks, man.
First glance, I thought we were talking about pterodactyls, and then I looked at it and realized it wasn't. So definitely excited about
Sorry
the
to
subject
disappoint.
instead of pterodactyls. No, this is far more exciting than the pterodactyl
Yeah.
stuff. So.
I can agree with that. Thank you very, very much, JJ. Hey, I'll have to say, he might actually have been as busy as me the last 2 weeks, so I can understand how he's screwing shit up. He's been a very busy man, actually. Headless Giant, please, sir, let everybody know what is going on.
How you doing? I'm the Headless Giant. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any paranormal or occult stories, you can send them to my email, and we'll read them on the show. My email is headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. And Ricardo, sir, please let everybody know what your deal is if they don't know who you are yet.
Sure.
My
Hello,
adversary.
everyone.
No.
Well, you told the secret. It was supposed to be a secret until it started. So, well, my name is Ricardo. I'm a multidisciplinary researcher. I'm working with the Institute for Natural Philosophy, and you can find me as it is in the screen at Ricardo Calvary 1 at X. That's where you find all the other connections to my work. So thank you for having me, and I'm very, very much looking forward to listen from Ed Casas about this topic. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. And last but not least, before we get to the special guest, Ethan Indigo. What is going on, sir?
Well, I'm excited for this. This will be interesting. Ethan Indigo Smith on all the social media. Pardon me. And I'm a writer and observer. I just put out an article recently on Occult Research Institute. So hope everyone checks it out. And always down to communicate. Thanks for coming up.
Of course, man. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, the guest, Ed, sir, please. Yes.
Hello, Ed Casas here.
Yes.
Calling you out from South Florida. It's a nice day out here. A little warm.
Nice. All right. So please, this is the first time you're on the show, and I'm not sure if my listeners know who you are. Can you please let people know what your deal is, and I guess where they can find all your research and the stuff that you've been covering?
Well, I didn't do my research on you guys. I just kind of threw myself into the fire. So I think you owe me a little bit of an explanation. Who the hell are you?
I don't know. How would we explain that? I guess we're a podcast of a bunch of
That's
different...
a fair question, sir. I like your style.
Yeah. Yeah, that caught me off
I'll
guard.
ask the questions around here.
He's the guy. This guy's got the hat on, so I mean, fuck.
I got the hat. The hat guy up there.
Oh no, that's a bandana, right? Yeah.
So now, how did you guys get started?
That's
What
the
is
sweatband.
this? What's? Do we have a mission statement?
The show's been around for about 4.5 years now. It was different when it first started. It was me and just another co-host. It ran for about 1.5 years. We covered a lot of conspiracies, a lot of stuff on occultism and magic. I used to be in the OTO. The original guy was, the other guy was in the Golden Dawn for a little bit. We both had left. And he had met me because I had my own solo show. He had met me through that, and then we formed the Occult Rejects. And, that lasted about 1.5 years. And then after he left, I started working with other people and just kind of started bringing them on, and just turned into what it is now. But basically, we cover occultism and true crime. Not always, I guess, we're big on the Mormons and Nazis, so I guess that ties into occultism. But we do cover stuff like that, paranormal, occult science.
Even a broke clock is right.
Yeah. Yeah, we just, I guess, cover everything that we can find like occultism in somehow.
Awesome. Well,
in weird
we can
science.
go that route.
So
we can go that route.
So I feel like this falls into that, and especially with you're showing drawings and stuff, or just carvings.
Yep.
So I mean, it's all connects. I think. Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. I said earlier before the show began, there's a lot to say about a lot to say.
Yes.
So.
But so I guess if you don't mind.
So what was your question? Let's go back to your question. Now I know who you are.
Now it's your turn. You got to tell us who you are, please.
So I have adopted the title xenoanthropologist. It's maybe a bit pretentious, but it's what I'm doing. I do have a degree in anthropology, and I have been an actual archaeologist. And so since we are dealing with what might be colloquially called ancient alien theory or paleo contact theory, it does sort of put me in a what I would call a fringe box. However, I would like to remind people, when you look at people like Billy Carson, Graham Hancock, and Giorgio, I don't think any of those are actually archaeologists. And I don't think any of those are utilizing the evidence of found bodies to support their theories. So I have a very unique combination of, I like to say, legitimacy. Just to get a little personal, I just got into a huge fight with a friend, and I was just tired of him gaslighting me. And it was too much. And he was working with a very base level, almost when we talk about conspiracy theories, the conspiracy is actually not that these are authentic. The conspiracy is actually that this is some sort of a grift and a plot to make money or something, which I've been accused of. And to my knowledge, a lot of what we're doing is actually hemorrhaging people's funds. And I think that should be noted. So, as again, you have to reel me in. I will go off in a bunch of directions. It's like, time. Flag on the field.
Yeah, flag on the field.
Ranting.
What if you even know, or maybe you could tell me your story of how you obtained access to these, but what occurred behind the scenes that these manifested into your hands and into other people's hands?
I think I do do you mind if I go into a little bit of my own personal mythology that leads us up to that?
Sure.
Please do.
Yeah.
When I was like 7 or 8 years old, in the front yard of my home in Bridgeport, Pennsylvania, it was like a mansion type home that was divided into like 3 or 4 apartments. I wonder who lived there when it was original. And it was raised up a level, so you had to take some concrete steps past some stone walls. And one day in the field, I reached down into the dirt and pulled out a little Egyptian shabti. That's a little turquoise little dude. Now, was it historical? Maybe from the 1900s, early 1900s, right? It was 1970s when I found it. Could it have been from Egypt? Somebody lost it? Maybe. Who knows? Maybe it was just a gift and a souvenir. But to that little kid, me, it said, hey, things that happen in like Scooby-Doo can really happen. You can really find cool things. And I think that just set me off in a direction. Later on, I had, my mother's sister would take me to the Native American museums, buy me Native American books. Bigfoot and In Search of was on at the time. And I remember my mother saying, fake, that's fake. The Patterson film, which to this day, I see a thigh muscle strike and flex when that leg hits the ground. She said it was fake. And wouldn't you know that her aunts ended up gifting me the Time Life book set. And what was in there? Books on evolution and primates and early man and all these wonderful things. And in there, smack dab in that book, were critters that looked like Bigfoot. And so another thing that said to me, maybe things aren't really as they appear to be. And maybe we shouldn't always listen to those in charge at times. So these were very, very fundamental. I mean, even in high school, I would skip school, and where would I go? the Natural History Museum. So,
That's cool.
or if I was in school, I was reading another book that I wasn't supposed to be, right? So I think I mentioned that, you know, the class I did best in was Anthropology 101 at the community college. Go figure. And so when it came time to choose a major, I've been acting since 1998. I was in a commercial with Mr. T, and I was killed by Eva Longoria and all these other cool. I was Jason Statham's stand-in, which is kind of like a stuntman, but you don't do squat. So you're a safe stuntman. So I was already doing all these acting things. So when it came time to major, I'm like, I'm going to major in anthropology because that's the class I did best in. And I ended up becoming the president of the honors club. And I volunteered at a natural history museum. You know, that's why I always tell people sometimes you got to do things for free. You might know plenty of people. I don't do anything without a buck. I get that. But I think there's investments in the world, and these investments are payoffs to yourself, your future self. So by volunteering there, I ended up taking over the education department. I ended up running the activities of monthly activities. We did family days. So we would do like plaster casts of dinosaur fangs or claws. Or one year we printed up a bunch of cryptid cards. So we had like Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Yeti all spread out all over the museum, and the kids would collect them. So we did these fun things. We would go to Peace River in Arcadia, Florida, where I would lead the fossil hunting there. And fossil hunting there is just river finds. A lot of it's duodong bones, which are like ancient manatees. So I did all these wonderful, wonderful things. And even though the museum did close, which was, you know, you have your dream job, and then to have that happen, it was devastating. A bunch of us tried to go on, and they still do go on, my friends. And I worked for then the Palm Beach Museum after the Graves Museum of Natural History and Archaeology. In the Palm Beach Museum, I worked closely with Bobby De Palma, who you can see on the BBC. He is a paleontologist prodigy who discovered evidence of the CT, the Cretaceous Tertiary extinction line. Yeah. So he found the silicone spheres. So please look up Bobby De Palma, who, by the way, at this day will not call me back. We got real life drama here too, people. I go back with these people. So Bobby won't call me back. So let me call Robert Feeney. Robert Feeney took himself down the Amazon and down the Nile, and he would like barter his way with like watches and oranges. Won't call me back.
Probably because
I got a physical anthropologist. Anyway, I think I'm probably digressing.
They're jealous of the beard.
I ended up working for the Palm Beach Museum with Bobby, got to be a paleotech. I did work at a paleo lab. So I actually also, which is rare, I'm also an archaeologist with paleontology experience. Although I didn't do field work paleo-wise, I did plenty of field work in Florida, which means digging lots of holes. And I think that brings us at least to our current day and age. So thank you for listening.
Oh, no, that was great. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Great introduction. Nice. All right, Headless. So you look like you wanted to ask.
Let's get into it. So you hear about these from someone?
Hold on. Actually, it was actually Ethan's question.
Yes. Oh, did he not
Ethan
finish it, actually? That's right, yeah.
He said, how did I get into this particularly, right?
Yeah,
okay, I think that's important.
Yes.
So I just wanted to like closing of a chapter, we're moving on.
That was so long, I forgot.
Fade out. Sorry. Modern day, September 2023. And what comes across my feed is what looks like a couple of plaster special kids crafts pictures of aliens on my Google feed. And I'm like, next, right? Swipe left, right? Not interested. Thank God my girlfriend was around, and she's like, did you check out those aliens? And I'm like, no, I didn't. She's like, you might want to check those out. Okay, so we checked them out, and we watched what was immediately to come was that congressional hearing. And there's Dr. Jose Zauce Benitez, the forensic anthropologist for the Mexican Navy, former, I believe, Oxford professor. He was it's telling the world we've got these non-human things. Whew. What got me was, and this is where it gets I recognize them, and and the other weird thing is I remember asking my professor about these. Why would I don't even know why I remember that question. And he said there was no connection because in the traditional anthropology calls this independent innovation. So the fact that like bow and arrows are invented in different places, they suggest that it just organically develops, which is in complete opposition to anthropology's general term, which is cultural diffusion. Human beings learn by things being passed along. And this gets me emotional because I've been at this now for 2 years, and I've had to face my friends and family. And I'm just trying to get the message out there. Crazy. Wow.
That's what we're here for.
I'll admit, I do have beer in here, so, there's a little bit of a depressant happening, I'm guessing.
Oh, I smoked some weed
forgive
too,
me.
so we're all right.
Wow. That was
That's
amazing.
all right, man.
Usually I get choked up about the Maori, but I guess I can continue. Is there any questions so far?
I do have one thing. I think I know where you're coming from, and you're definitely not alone because Ricardo here, he's got a friend who tried to get his mathematics published on these dolmen sites, right? And they immediately threw it back and says we don't do mathematics on these things. So he took out all these different parts and resubmit it, and then we can't accept that because the mathematics hasn't been invented yet. And it's just like how does this keep happening?
Well, there you go. Yeah. What do you do then? And then I guess in geological terms, they call them glacial erratics. That's when like one weird stone's on top of another. And maybe that stone looks like a tridactyl head. I'm just saying. They call them, glacial erratics. So this has been very emotional for me because I did have an existential spiritual moment. Oddly, it was on the solar eclipse in October. And I got out of bed and said, I have to write this down. And that's when I wrote the first part of my constant companion theory, which you can find at tridactyls.com. Currently, tridactyls.com is basically my placeholder for my two cultural articles. And I'll be adding a second science article and 2 science articles. So what I'm kind of doing is instead of just keeping all this shit to myself and writing a book, it's just like we're in a new paradigm here. So I'm just playing social media intermediary. Well, I'm trying to play intermediary, but really I'm at the peak right now of providing people not just with the cultural information, which I thought I had a black market on, I had a monopoly on because I'm 2 years ahead of everyone in research essentially. But now I'm also moving forward with the biological, and the two together are just, ontological shock.
I would ask you, considering the relevance of what you have and what you're showing, and considering the vast amount of, I will call it generally as UFO communities, but the people that are interested in biological entities, or exobiology. Thank you. I told this to most of those that are here. That is, I don't understand how people are more interested in blurry images of something that cannot be identified when you have.
That's what I said to my friend. My same friend who won't listen. Mm-hmm.
You have something that can actually be looked upon, analyzed, seen, and finish this paradigm that has been a chasm between these two, that believers and non-believers, right? So why aren't you get that attention? I don't understand it.
They say that the Vietnam War affected Americans' perception on authority. So you end up with rebellious characters in the cinematic universe and maybe even the comic book universe that were to come after it. Even someone like Dirty Harry or Wolverine from Marvel. There's this mentality, and it kind of was on the back of the conspiracy of JFK. Then the American psyche suffers 9/11, which hasn't been resolved in my opinion. In fact, whatever the opposite of resolve is, that's what's happened.
Well, we've been writing
and
on
then
the back
COVID, of course, comes around. And so let's keep going with this And then we have AI and CGI and people who are just outright liars for disingenuous reasons. I don't know why people do that, but they've managed to create a dystopian, paranoid society where truth cannot be discerned from falsitudes. And so while I am quite apt at arguing politics with people, this has a whole different weird spin to it because politics can be kind of subjective. Yeah, that's your opinion, man. But, you know, they say Americans specifically have a problem discerning opinion from fact. And so now opinion somehow is displaced Exhibit A. And so, yeah, it's been frustrating. It's like I can do a political debate with you, but for you just to like willfully ignore scans, we got issues. And can you imagine? I don't even talk to people about the cultural archaeological connections because how can I if you don't believe these are physical bodies? You'll never. Whatever I say after that's going to be like, right?
That's why I found I didn't understood when I asked you if you were taking any measures to try and actually get them seen by proper people, by proper academics that cannot be taken as non-credible. And you answered me that you weren't. That's for other people to do, if you remember.
It was the DNA. I don't have access to the DNA, nor would I probably even know what to do with it. You know, I can have an opportunity to go see the bodies, but even if I got there, I'm like, what am I going to do? Take $1,000 selfie?
Sure.
I realize how valuable I have been staying home every day. When I say I've been doing this full time, guys, that means for the last 2 years, since September 2023, I wake up and sit in front of this very same keyboard and research and create content and write content and put it out there. And just playing my role, I have a personal philosophy called education through entertainment. And I've used it here locally in Broward County to earn tens of thousands of dollars of grants for such things as we did a conquistador 2 years in a row. We did a conquistador show, if you will, where, again, my friend Robert Feeney, the gentleman who took himself down the rivers of the world, the longest rivers, he and I would do a historical reenactment of conquistadors, and I'd get to wear the armor. And by the way, I can dance in conquistador armor. So anyway, the point of that was just saying that, you know, my whole rant was, you asked me why.
Yeah, but that's my fault because I wrongly assumed that you were the curator of those beings.
I see. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, gotcha.
I believe that you had them. You were the curator.
No, I am and people might not realize that. Again, they think there's some cadre of Tridactyl masterminds out there. And I'm an independent researcher who just recognized them from an anthropology class 23 years ago. And if no one else is going to say that exact thing, then I'm going to say it. And it is what it is. Now, should I continue, by the way? Do you want to ask any questions about Canada or Caribbean? Because I'd like to move on geographically.
I have a question for you, Ed.
Yes. Vance.
In regards to folks not comprehending things.
No, it's Vance.
I would, not the Vice President, JJ Vance. I think I can help you out with the lack of comprehension of folks. The literacy rates of America are getting back to, we're in some new all-time lows. In fact, 150 years ago, we had far higher literacy rates than we did today. But what bodies are we talking about? What bodies are we talking about here? That was my main question. I mean,
okay.
I'm going to always comment on how
the
folks
first two bodies, there's a little bit, there's a confusion about how many specimens, where they went.
Yeah,
there are two bodies that were shown in front of the Mexican Congress, and I thought their names were Clara and Mauricio. I'll have to look at my, I do have a running list. I never heard of those again. So those may have been spirited off to other sources. So that is an interesting point you bring up. Now, unless those names were aliases to protect the innocent. No, I don't know. Unless those names were just, maybe they're different specimens. So yeah, the first two that I saw in Mexico, not personally, I believe was Clara and Mauricio. I'll definitely look it up while we're talking here, though.
And then there's
So,
other.
how many are there?
Currently, there are about 22, but the rumor has it that there is 100 or 1,000.
What? Even 22 is a decent amount.
Are they all
It's a
from the
decent
same
amount for
location?
a scientific sample, right?
Yeah.
Well, are they all from the same location or area, or are they more?
So that's great. So yes, they've all been found apparently near Nazca, Peru, the Nazca lines, right? Very famous for what appears to be depictions of the astronaut. And others strangeties, right?
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Possibly
I'm looking right now
pterodactyls or large
for a
birds.
list of tridactyl specimens updated, and it says updated. It's probably not even updated. Let me just see if I can show that to you guys. Yeah.
Sure.
You see that?
Yes.
Mauricio. Yeah, Clara and Mauricio. So you see I have them listed. This might not be an updated list. And Wawita probably shouldn't be on there because Wawita looks like perhaps a body that was created in emulation. And they probably realized they did something horribly wrong and then murdered her.
I found that Artemis interesting. Nice name.
Who assigned these names? Did they come with name tags, or who assigned these names?
Yeah, how does that come up, actually? That's a good question.
That's funny because, I suggest that maybe some of these have different names. For example, Alberto has a metal hip in him. So maybe he's actually Vulcan or Hephaestus.
Yeah, but there is different people with very different imaginations over there, because you go from Artemis to Big Hands 1 and Big Hand 2.
That's all they have, though, right? So I just want to give you just a little bit more of a cultural background. We'll piggyback on that question there. So the bodies were found in Nazca, Peru. My recollection from class was Bella Coola, Canada, and the Taino of the Caribbean, where you can find a bit of a forward identification process on my part was one of the first things I identified, aside from the 3 fingers, of course, which is obvious, is the cordiform shaped face. And what I mean by cordiform, I mean heart-shaped face. So this cordiform or heart-shaped face, I decided to look up Polynesian or Oceanic cultures, and the Maori people have the Heitiki, and it is a green stone or a jade type stone of a cordiform faced, which the cordiform, let's talk about it. What is actually making the humps of the heart are these supraorbital arches, which you probably are more familiar with on something like an ape or a primitive human. In fact, we can look at this skull and say how alien it is. I can also look at it and say how human this still looks. It is not too far off from what's known as Homo longi, which coincidentally or ironically is Dragon Man. Well, whoever that anthropologist who named that, it's like, nailed it. And I'll tell you why. So the Maori have the Heitiki, and it's a little green stone, 3-fingered, sitting sort of cross-legged, bent neck, and they call that being, and this is where I normally get it. This is where I normally get choked up. But I think I got that out of the way, is they call that being the ancestor. And those same petroglyphs that I found, Tridactyl, I didn't find them, but I noted I want to be clear, I noted the similarities. The Tridactyls and cordiform shaped faces were found with images of spirals, images of serpents, and mother imagery, mother goddess imagery. So what is mother goddess imagery? Maybe there's a depiction of a smaller being below, or literally giving birth. And so a being is emerging from another being. So let's just go over some of those again. Cordiform heart shape, of course, the tridactyl limbs, water spirals, serpent imagery, snakes, and mother goddess. So I put all of those together, plus the Maori belief calling the Heitiki the ancestor, and I was basically off and running from there.
So how do you decided to start relating these cultures? Were just for those artifacts? Did you look into their tradition, their
Yes.
folklore?
Yes.
It helps to confirm your assumptions.
Yeah. So one of the first things I did, of course, was I checked with other archaeologists. Now, keep in mind, most of this is casual. So, and sometimes I just take information and I stick it in my brain and I'm off and running. So I didn't always citation anything or.
Sure.
So I just did a casual research of archaeologists, and they supported my suspicions that the spiral was water, and that all of this imagery was connected. And how was that deciphered? Because there is a prominent myth throughout humanity of a serpent mother, reptilian tutelary beings coming from the water with knowledge. And it turns out, again, kind of looking at that independent innovation, which is archaeological coincidence, anthropological coincidence. This is very much all over the place. Serpent worship. I mean, come on, how many conspiratorial, if you will, YouTube videos? And I have to say, before the bodies were shown, I didn't want to hear about the Bible. I didn't want to hear about the Anunnaki. I didn't want to hear about reptilians. Now I'm putting all of this together in this crazy cocktail of what happened. And it turns out that my research brought me to, if I could come to one codified belief, one codified serpent worship belief that is still alive and well today, and that's Hinduism and the belief in the Naga. This is not the past. Sadhguru, the philosopher philanthropist, engages in Naga Padmi. I can't remember the rest of it. And it's a Naga festival.
Well, the serpent worship is the oldest form of worship. So,
well, it turns out that any sort of, in my opinion, animal mythology, any culture that sort of puts some sort of animal on a pedestal, is because that animal either looked like or engaged in a behavior that was similar to the ancestors. And who are the ancestors according to the Maori? These tridactyl beings, and again, codified in the Naga beliefs and also the dragon beliefs. So here we are. Yes.
Excuse me, Ed. I'm sorry.
I ran. Thank you for interrupting me.
It's okay. In the Aztec and the Mayan people, they do still practice the serpent worship of Quetzalcoatl, and they do consider it being the I guess ancestor. And they've said that they worship snakes because when they open people up, all they find is snakes, right? And that snakes were life, and it was what connected us between all the realms. And then as well as water itself, I believe they also said that the ancients walked out of the water and gave life on land. So
thank you for that addition.
Incas also have that belief system. And so almost, I'm not very familiar with Native Americans above the Rio Grande, but at least South America, Central, and Mexico, they still have that belief system in their indigenous people.
And you can join both of those things because the serpentine water on those sculpted rocks,
right?
The serpentine, the water, to make the water look like the head of a snake. That is that bulge of the beginning of the water. And
I had a sort of a little personal revelation on that. And that is, I actually live on it looks like a canal. It's supposed to be a slow running river. And I noticed that life makes concentric circles under that water. So there's going to be times, perhaps, I hope I don't disappoint. But again, I think the whole of humanity's cosmology, mythology, religion is based on a primate's interpretation on an amphibious species behavior. So these beings emerging from the water, this is a good connection. So are you guys with me up to this point? There's if something doesn't make sense, then be like,
no.
wait, how did you get there?
Okay.
Because I'm trying to take you on my own personal journey of discovery on how this what could be seen as a little discovery just kept getting bigger. So if we all agree that serpent worship is a cultural, universality, then we can move on.
Sure.
I just wanted Serpent Mound supposedly 4,500 years old, approximately. So we're talking.
What is?
That's Serpent Mound in Adams County, Ohio.
I was even thinking that Serpent Mound might even. Maybe we're interpreting it wrong. Maybe it's not a mouth. Maybe it's the head.
I got a lot of ideas what it might be, but it's often considered a serpent. And it is allegedly 4,500 years old or so.
And let's go a little parallel from the serpents. I mean, there's the frog people of the Northwest. There's owls that you're not supposed to stare at. There's ant people. There's termite mounds. There's the Anhinga. So my experience is, and anytime, unfortunately that's where I'm at right now. Anyone, I point out something. I showed a Northwest Pacific Indian depiction of a frog, very stylized, and they said that's just a frog, and I'm like, well, there's no three-fingered frogs in that Northwest Canada, so I'm guessing it's a little bit more than that, So any animal from where I stand, again, is just because, hey, doesn't that remind you of the ancestors? Yeah, it does, and that's where we're at. So let's go back to the water. So. I've had a lot of byproducts of these discoveries, meaning I've had to learn Semitic script. I've had to learn Chinese script. And I'm certainly not an expert, but I definitely recognize some things now. And one of the cool byproducts was I found out that the Sphinx and Lion's Rock in Sri Lanka both cross-coordinate within a degree on Mount Kailash, the holiest mountain in the world.
Coincidence takes planning.
Coincidence takes planning. I like that. Yeah, exactly. So why is Mount Kailash? And I've come to my own conclusion that, let's take it a step back. At the base of Mount Kailash, there are two lakes. There's Lake Rakasha or Angkuo, and Manosarvar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right. The freshwater lake. We have a saltwater lake and a freshwater lake right next to each other. One is named after the ogre mother goddess, and there's a little bit of pareidolia there if you're going to look up Lake Rakasha at the base near Mount Kailash, which kind of looks like a tridactyl with a long neck and a big head. So if these beings may have been so powerful, maybe they even did some terraforming. So anyway, we have this saltwater lake and this freshwater lake. And it's a rumor that one goddess became impregnated when she swam in that freshwater lake. I think another goddess said that an elephant's trunk entered her side and impregnated her. So there's something going on in Mount Kailash. And one of the things I thought was, is there just giant pareidolia here? That's what's funny when people accuse me of like various pareidolia. It's like, well, guess what the ancients freaking loved? They loved pareidolia. If you came across a rock that looked like one of the ancients, you'd be like, cool rock, let's come back here. Maybe you would even formate it. Let's make it look more like the ancestors. So we have to be careful when we like dismiss things as pareidolia, because pareidolia is what makes animals metaphorical stand-ins for the beings.
I think there's always the danger when we are hyper-focused on something that we start seeing things that are not actually there. But I also think that we also find a lot of things that are actually there that other people don't see.
Actually there.
So there has to be some judgment and put the dazzling of our interest and our fascination by this a little bit to the side. But I've seen some of your images and I can see what you see. To prove it is another thing, but yes. there is something. It is.
So let me just
one second. I think
absolutely.
Ethan had a question that I interrupted once, and then you stepped in.
And
Well, no, thank you so much. No, it was just a silly esoteric point on your overall build of the rejection of the serpent, and sometimes maybe it's so ubiquitous we might not notice it. But the Bible, right, really starts with the rejection of not just the serpent, but the old serpent, right? So all that old serpent worship. So
it's right there. It's right there, and it's been with us the whole time. It's a misinterpretation, I am afraid. And
do you think?
Let me just stick with the water real quick. So, and of course, you guys know the Sumerian myths of Oannes and Dagon coming from the water with the fish heads. Well, I think they got the fish heads wrong. I think if you look at the Tridactyl profile, it looks like a fish that can go like this. In fact, the Isle of Capra, which may be related to the myth of Capricorn, where the satyr Pan jumps into the Mediterranean and becomes half fish, half goat. If you look at the Isle of Capra, here's more pareidolia for you, just like Lake Rakasha. The Isle of Capra looks like the profile of a tridactyl head. Lake Rakasha looks like a skinny-necked head of a mother goddess tridactyl. So here we are. Listen to that name, Ankuo. Well, I started to notice what I identified as the Naga morpheme. And this is how we can demonstrate a global culture through this simple method. It seems as though saltwater lakes in Tibet region, West Tibet, Chinese names perhaps, many of them had the morpheme in it, like Naga. I started to notice that this morpheme is pretty prominent in a lot of places. In fact, that Ankuo, if you look into Proto-Indo-European, we have the Angles, we have Anglish, and it has the in it. Angels. And angle and anguila in Spanish is what? Eels. And the Maori, their gods are also eels.
Ed, we can't forget angels.
And of course, angels, which of course is one of those things that's a little bit like, yes, the angels, which people say, hey, that means messenger. I'm like, yeah, but who is delivering it?
Right.
So that's where I'm at with that, which also led me to believe that perhaps there at Mega Lake Gobi, which is now the Gobi Desert, may have been primate Eden, and a proto-language may have developed from there. And you have to consider the Tibetan creation myth of an ogress goddess who mates with the monkey god. Well, my God, if that just isn't the tale that we're looking at genetically in a creature like Maria. And that might be about all I have to say culturally, unless there's other questions. Oh, there's probably artifact questions.
But I would like to ask you something.
I'll take a break here. I'm gonna take. Do we actually? What time is it? Do we get a break?
We can do a short break. What do you think?
If you need one.
Yeah, Nichols sing us a song.
No,
I'm getting a little dry here, but no, keep going. Let's go.
Okay, so I have a question on a subject that interests me particularly. In fact, I have two questions. First of all,
bring it.
If there's any relation in your research, considering that the Kailasha mountain, it's very much like Pilot Mountain in the United States, only Pilot Mountain is just much smaller. But both are made of crystal. I want to know if you find any relation with the tridactyls and crystal. And my second question is the one that I'm more focused in, that I noticed in your research that you note that they have a specific throat for specific sounds or something of the sort. And I'm very curious, the throat.
Oh, the bone. It's not their throat. No, but since they don't have lungs, they're not going to be making vocalizations that way.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you said crystals. Of course, they have implants, and there allude to be possibly osmium implants, which if that's true, that indicates a very advanced industrial society to make the osmium. And that actually even the diatomaceous earth, which is the white substance that covers them and protects them from pests, that requires high industrial activity that wasn't really invented until the 1800s. But as far as other stones go, jade and greenstone seemed to be the depiction of the beings, which led me to understand, oh, we have little green men here. And if you notice, one of the individual skulls, I want to say it was skull, 10, maybe, skull number 10. Once they cleaned it up, sure enough, the green started to appear from it. So.
That's interesting. So natural pigmentation on the bone itself?
Apparently there is skin material preserved thanks to that diatomaceous earth. You know, these beings may have spawned the entire mummification process. The Egyptian mummies would remove the inner organs. Well, these guys don't have them anyway. Did they inspire that? I'd say likely. That's where I'm at right now. It's like everything in our culture is derived from these beings, which is why I say even down to our basic symbol of the heart. And you're going to ask again, well, how come the heart? Their face is shaped with the heart, and they're associated with mother goddess imagery, ancestor worship, fertility imagery, and creation.
So do you think that it was these beings that engineered humans?
I mean, I don't know if I'd use the term engineer, but to piggyback onto, I believe it's the Dogon tribes about the serpent mother. The serpent mother, and keep in mind, they have this belief in Tibet too. It's very similar. These aren't, and are we going to just disregard the beliefs of the ancients and we're going to supplant them with our own Western Judeo-Christian mumbo jumbo? That's why I don't even like getting into some like metaphysical debates with people, because it's like the battle of the woo, and I'm not going to trade woo with you. Believe what you want. I'm just telling you what I found. There's, and what I suspect. So
how do you suspect they communicate if they didn't emit sound?
Okay, so let's go ahead. And you said about a bone, or you said about the throat. Let's go look at a quick bone photo here. If you guys want to keep asking questions or talk amongst yourselves. Well, I looked this up real quick.
I actually have a question, but I'll wait.
No, go ahead.
Did they have belly buttons?
So they don't have belly buttons, and even Maria, who is a human-sized being, she doesn't have a navel, and she doesn't have a coccyx. So one of the, and well, that'll be another slide probably. Let me get back to wherever.
Then they were not born of the placenta.
Say that again?
Yeah. That means they were likely came from an egg, just like the eggs we have in the smaller ones. So Maria, because she doesn't have a coccyx, and you can partially thank me to this, the researchers had already noted that the lower lumbar looked fused, or there seemed to be one singular bone. Well, I looked at it and said, that's a frog ass. That's what's called a Euro-style, because why? They lost the tail already. And we can look at that in a slideshow. Let's see if we can look at this thing here first. Sure. Let me go ahead and
so you said they don't have
this bone.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You said they don't have organs. Do they have any organs?
So since the best equivalent, guys, is to think of. Oh, I can't see more of it. Oh, all right. There we go. Are we okay?
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy.
It's blurry.
Yeah, I don't know why. It looks better
blurry.
Before. Yeah, before it was fine.
Maybe I can make it giant or,
Are you on full screen on your screen?
No. Let's see. Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, but it's probably sharing something else now, right? Well, hey, let's look at her.
Oh, I can only see like half.
How's that look?
Can you drag it down maybe? I don't know. For some reason, it's only showing the bottom. There we go. Well, yeah. Okay.
No good still?
No, you're perfect in the middle. It's just a little fuzzy.
Just doesn't have the definition that you have, but yeah.
So we were asking about communication, and it looks like to me, and this was identified by Miles and I believe a Russian doctor by the name of Galetsky. And that was what they call a pyramid or a pyramidal bone. And it's right behind the eye sockets, just kind of below the temporal bone here. And they suggested that it was for balance, which it could be. And this is one of those weird things where I kind of just have a guess on that maybe came true or will come true. We'll see. Is that it may be used for sound amplification and perhaps even for buoyancy control. And this is not any sort of a bone that you would find in your ear. It doesn't relate to those bones. There's no sort of chambers, if you will. So it appears to be something not related to primate DNA.
And with your, when you show the face, the heart-shaped face, and what the brain looks like. I know that there was like a elongation and, or I've been to Peru. I've seen the elongated, skulls. So I was assuming that it would have something like that, but it does not. It has more of a heart-shaped face. The heart-shaped face reminds me of the brain of a dolphin. And usually they have their two lobes much more pronounced because it is the section of auditory development where they can echo better than they can. Like our visual is better, right? So our frontal part is much more developed as well as our occipital. But with dolphins, it's much more enhanced in the area of the auditory. So it reminds me of that. And when you talk about that,
that's interesting because there might be two dried spheres within the skull. Don't quote me on that, but we could definitely look into that. And perhaps that does indicate something of that nature. And I wouldn't put it past them if these are marine creatures like I suspect. So that's a good thing to talk about. So why are these marine creatures? Your first superficial clue, they have 3 fingers. So we have 3-fingered frogs, we have 3-fingered salamanders. But we want to go deeper than that. The fact that they don't have lungs, which alludes to cutaneous respiration, which also alludes to cutaneous waste removal, indicates an amphibian and something more, not a lizard man, but something more akin to a salamander man. But what makes the tridactyls interesting, and let's go ahead, I will go ahead and return to that.
But are we aware of any live creature that doesn't use lungs on this type of morphology?
Yes, salamanders. Types of salamanders and amphibians.
Okay.
Yeah,
and so, but what's unusual? Yes? What'd you say?
I said their lung is their skin.
Okay.
Right. And so if you've heard of the tales of horrible smells that attribute to the aliens or demons, if these guys are getting rid of ammonia or nitrogen, you might be getting a strange smell. So what do you guys see right now?
I'm very curious about that diatomaceous earth plate that it has on the chest.
Right. So that's definitely some copper alloy. What I might be more interested in is how much iron might be in here from Europe and how much copper might be here from the Great Lakes region. That would be interesting. But we talk about the no lungs, but yet we have to mention this, which we suspected is a type of furcula, or again, the Russian doctor from St. Petersburg said an interclavicle, which means something that predates a furcula. So why would you have something like this? Perhaps support of the skin, perhaps support if you're digging or burrowing or climbing, perhaps support for swimming, or perhaps even support because I suspected that these beings, and we don't have full definitive proof of this yet, but the scans allude to beings that go through, as since they're metamorphic, they lose their tails, it seems, they go through a metamorphosis of front limb development. And perhaps that's why the axolotl salamander in the Mesoamericans has its religious significance, right? Each animal to its own unique ability. So one of the things that the archaeology has taught me is the archaeology and the ancestral narrative are predicting the biology. So when you hear myths of, dare I say, virgin births or some sort of earth mother impregnating herself, this is them. If you talk about gods like Loki and Set, who appear to change sex, this is likely them, because there's evidence of hermaphroditism. And if you know amphibians, you know they can experience sequential hermaphroditism, depending on the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have a furcula, and if you also notice, they have something we don't have. Let's go ahead and look back at that. They have abdominal ribs, floating abdominal ribs, or gastralia, which you'll find in crocodilians and some dinosaurs. So just looking at some of these traits, we have amphibians, we have birds, we have crocodiles. And of course, we have the eggs, which I am proud to say I may be one of the first people on the planet to say, hey, we got baby dragons. When was the last time you saw a baby dragon? When they made Artemis's scans and video available to me, I already knew what to look for, because I saw that the Chinese had already made their awareness of these beings known in small jade pig dragons. And I have a couple of
my next question. So you got there by yourself.
I what?
It was going to be my next question. How about the larvae? For you to talk about.
Yes. So I was fed of what to look for in the eggs by the Chinese pig dragons, which I have a couple here for you to take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
No groovy jade, unfortunately. This one's awesome looking. This one looks like and these might be replicas. I don't know, to be honest. But someone still made
what are these in?
These are called Hongshan pig dragons. And
Okay.
it provided me with the clue that we would be looking for larvae within the eggs. So when I went snooping around Artemis's eggs, sure enough, I found one which appears to be hatching, and I found another one within the egg, and I also found images of other tiny little eggs within the beings, the embryos themselves.
Well, that's an interesting study, sir. So that's interesting. You got tipped off by this ancient folklore of presumably ancient, right, from China. What's the backstory on those on the Chinese perspective?
You know, there's not a lot. It's you know, a lot of times if someone's buried with something, it's a funerary gift or something. So you might find them buried with people. So, you know, they like them, right? They like them a lot.
That's for sure, right?
Yeah, and of course, you got to keep in mind, guys. So here's another thing. As I talk about the Naga and the dragons, keep in mind, I made this prediction before Maria's DNA was done. When they did Maria's DNA, she came back Han Chinese, where we're finding the origin of the dragons, and Myanmar, who still to this day worship the dragon mother and practice neck extensions. So I was already putting that cultural stuff out there before her genetics came back. So I can't emphasize enough, guys, that yes, as some of you alluded to by the Bible, yes, our ancestral narratives and our mythology does indicate, you know, some of our suspicions, and the archaeological record. I knew that these were going to be front first beings in their development based on letters found in American West, in Semitic script, in Chinese letters like Xi. Do you guys know what the Chinese letter for God is, or sky? The earliest ones. You ever see what the earliest letters look like for that?
No, sir. No.
So let's look at why one of the reasons I knew that we were going to be dealing with a front limb first being, because not that one. Oh, jeez.
So while you're looking for that on the DNA stuff, so that sounds like what, South Central China? You said Han and Myanmar.
So yeah, this kind of spins off my theory that the proto-human culture came off of the Himalayan plateau, where they said the goddess was the dragon mother, or they'll call her, what do they call her? The dragon mother of the West. You know, I call her Dragon Queen X because I like to be extra.
All right, fair enough.
But
Fucking
so we're
gumpies.
looking at a letter Xi in Chinese, which means the child. And so here's some other, let's see if we can zoom in. Of course, that one in the center is poopy looking, right? So this told me that we were going to be expecting these. We were going to be expecting front limb first development, which of course goes right along with their amphibian background, yeah?
I'm going to make you a crazy question. Have you ever pondered that could be the face before the face we see now on the Sphinx?
Yes. Yes. In fact, when you actually look at the Sphinx and you do some casual measuring, it's not too far off. Look how elongated that is. And part of my discovery is that, yes, cats are just one of the symbolic versions of these creatures because of their benign little faces. And probably the way they sat, because they went through a quadrupedal stage. Look at Iconography. He's pictured in this same quadrupedal stage.
Think about the differences between house cats and wild cats, right? They've got the slit for eyes, which is not normal for cat species. They've got a snake-like tail, which the other species of cats don't have. And there's definite differences that you see, you know, especially in Egypt. They've got the symbol of these mummies that have that heart-like face shown up in the cat. So there's a lot of that symbolism.
Yeah, and if you notice the way they bury the cats, they break all their bones and kind of put them all crazy upright. What were they trying to recreate there?
Yep.
What were they trying to create with a crocodile? If you look at a crocodile from above and look down at it, it could look like an elongated head being staring back at you. So let's talk about one more example of the child. And that'll segue us into steganography. How many people in the group are familiar with my steganography theory?
I'm not.
Or I call it have no graven images theory. So I believe that there are traces of these beings. And one of the clues that I'm expecting front limb development in an amphibian creature is the head of Ganesh. The head of Ganesh is said to have a body shaped like an elephant's head. Not that the whole guy is an elephant. And so here is a head of Ganesh that I spotted, which appears to show the child character that I just showed you in perhaps worship of sky. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to show you. We're going to look at the sky symbol. So I call this my theotherianthropic grapheme theory, which essentially means God, beast, man letters. So that's another part of the evidence that we can cite for a possible proto-civilization. There you go. That is Tien. Oh, you got to see it. Did you see that I show you the Ganesh or no?
No, I didn't
see
get
it?
to see it. No. There we go.
Okay, I totally talked about. We'll have to go back. This is Tien, one version of it. Note the anomalous limbs. These guys have strange hinged limbs. They don't have ball and socket everywhere. I'm not sure about. I have to look more into the arms and the hips, but the where the elbows and knees are. So we have Tien there, which is the symbol for God or symbol for sky. Here's another version. Is that strange? Now let's look at Ganesh. Let's see. Oh, here it is. This is the head of Ganesh, which I believe is depicting the child character. And what do they call Ganesh in Tamil language but the child? And one more. Another head of Ganesh.
Yeah, can you make that a little bit? Yeah, perfect.
So I call this steganography, or also it relates to a more complicated steganography, which I call perspective anamorphosis, which means for you to decipher the hidden message in the art, it's dependent on your own perspective. And I believe that perspective also is dependent on, do you believe in these things? Or it might even go as deep as, do you have empathy for these things? I love posting the steganography because many times there is a anthropomorphic human figure that distracts the viewer. So people will say, I don't see no tridactyl. I just see a person with 5 fingers. Well, usually that person is fulfilling a role of a motif I discovered in relation to these, which is related to the serpent mother motif, which is life from the mouth. You mentioned the Mesoamerican beliefs before. There's the jaguar cats who seem to be spitting out scrolls of life. So there's a life from a mouth motif, which again would go along with the gastro brooding of an amphibian creature whose eggs are hatching within them. So that is why my belief that the entirety of human cosmology is based on a primate seeing something give birth to a larva from its mouth, or maybe even from its head, as in the case of the mind-born motif. Because what if these larvas were confused being born within a hybrid being and couldn't figure out how to escape?
Who popped out of Zeus's head after
exactly
I hit him in the head with a hammer? And what's the symbol
it's usually 3, just like there's 3 eggs.
Right.
It's
what's
the same
symbol
myth.
for Athena? Athena's the one who popped out of his head, and Athena has the owl with the heart-shaped face.
Mm-hmm. And she's always depicted with a super long helmet, like what's she concealing under there? So yes, all of our myths. You guys, that's why I try to tell people this. You guys could do your own due diligence by reinvestigating the myths and the religions. You can go back to the artifacts, go into the museums, where I've discovered that even something as basic as our cross-hatching pattern appears to be inspired by a very similar cross-hatching pattern on their skin. I suggest the whole of our symbolic world is based on these beings, which is why even as a child, I would stare at floors and volutes that are even in my house now. And I would say to my mother, I see a face, right? Pareidolia. And my mother's like, oh, that's just a design. Look at our ionic columns. I had suspected that the ionic columns were the head and eyes of a tridactyl, which sounds crazy. And I'm talking about those columns at the top of our U.S. Treasury, I think they're at, of all places, if you want conspiracy. And so what's there? There's a 2 spirals, 2 volutes. Well, it turns out the ionic columns is derived from temples devoted to Hera, devoted to serpent worship, built over springs. I mean, do you see the connection? And so if you look into our history, we have things called Asherah poles with depictions on it. We have the bronze serpent from the Old Testament placed on a pole. We have Hathor. And perhaps one of my greatest steganographic discoveries was the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, where it turns out it appears as though
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That if you stand at a specific angle, at a specific distance, the 2 images of the goddess contract on one another and become one singular image.
And you have the top of the columns. The face
and you
is
have
on
the top of the columns. So that was another just one of those interesting things. I had already predicted that, oh, I see a connection here. Are you guys familiar with the Syrian eye idols? The Syrian eye idols look like little gingerbread cookies of ET, 3,800 BC.
And have your research led you to anything about how the larvae were cared for or evolved into the metamorphosis?
I suspect that I saw in ancient Sumerian of depictions of An or Anu. They make him a stylized version of what looks like a little square ionic column. So that was really the connector. He segued the little gingerbread cookies of ET, the Syrian eye idols. He represented a sort of intermediary phase before we went to a more stylized phase of the ionic columns. The myths of these beings are either going to become super stylized and we're not going to recognize them, or the opposite. They're going to become super anthropomorphized and we're going to call them dwarves and elves. Let's look at this one.
So what, Ed, what's the story on these Sumerian Syrian eye idol business? What are these little creatures?
They are the. What's that?
Do they what's their perspective or folklore behind these?
Yeah, related to fertility and related to the eye goddess of Telbrak, because they're all depicted with these big. I even suggest that even our infinity symbol, our plus symbol. So the conspiracy with me is I don't know if the historic narrative is accurate enough to depict the grand influence. History, right? Yeah, I don't think it's clear enough to predict the grand influence that these beings had on simple primate ancestors. In fact, I dare say we might not be anything without them. You know, there's these defenders of the local people. How dare you say the aliens built the pyramids? But, you know, even when you talk to some of the indigenous people of South America, they say, we didn't build that. Or somebody else built that.
I say the same thing about the mounds here in America, sir, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's not being disrespectful. You know, we have to get past us and them anyway. It's likely just us. Why do I say that? Because if all the clues are leading back to mother goddesses, creator beings, fertility symbolism, and ancestor worship, it means the whole of humanity is just really based on ancestor worship, and these are the ancestors. You know, shaft tombs to recreate the egg birth into the earth, because the beings came from the earth, likely. Hence, termite mounds are to some people turned into shrines. Termite mounds. We have to start looking at these things not from that myopic, Eurocentric, Judeo-Christian viewpoint, which is the problem with a lot of ancient alien stuff. They rarely go past Turkey. They go east. They don't, you know. Meanwhile, my experience is, well, the Chinese and the Indians actually codified these myths. You know, there's a whole book called the Nilamata Purana, which gives you like the generations of the Naga. If they're making such detailed notes of these, I don't think it's just mythology. But what do? We dismiss it and say fake. And at the same time, we're probably swearing up and down on the New Testament. So that if you do that, if you call someone else's beliefs mythology at the same time, elevate your own to some higher status, that's disingenuous, and that's not how it works. It shouldn't, especially considering that we're probably all the same people and the same religion, just watered down.
And the astronaut in the Nazca lines, as well as the Syrian eye idols, they all look very similar, I think.
Yeah. This is the thing. I think. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just the amount of similarity that exists.
Yeah, and that's just it. They're all over the world. Those same cordiform heart-shaped faces are on rivers in Russia. They're in the Australian area, and sometimes it's carved. Sometimes you can see they use vitrification, so they burnt the heart-shaped faces. This is what makes it fun, guys. It's not too hard. I mean, even those, even Arches National Park was that intentional, because I suggest that they may have invented the infinity symbol, because some of these temples in India, if you go to Google Earth and you look up at these key religious locations, as you zoom out, you may see the temple or the rock structure resemble an infinity shape. You pull out some more, you might see like a field or dry earth that looks like it's an infinity shape. So there's this recursive art, I'd suggest, tridactyl recursive art, where not only do images share elements of each other, but add infinitum into space. Whoa.
So I threw this in here. This is Artemis, one of the first goddess statues. It's mixed with Kybele, one of the first goddess cults out of a place in Turkey, right? So this is all central Turkey, Anatolia. And what you see all over her are supposed to be breasts, but could those be eggs?
I would say so. Also, do you know what I do with, does anyone, maybe you know, what I do with every piece of archaeology? Do you know what I do to it?
What do you do?
I squint. Because that's the other part of the steganography. I've discovered what I call the brilliance motif, which is complex art conceals images and knowledge of the beings. And it's an ancient form of squint image. Now, this is one of those things that's very hard for people to buy. I can usually give you like a Steganography 101, and we can start with an easy one. And just so you can demonstrate, I can demonstrate to you what I suggest is, again, have no graven images.
And like, what are those things right there?
Those are clearly babies.
Yeah, and they look like little. And again, you know, are those little humanoids? Because if you
those are
little dragons.
That's what I thought. You're right.
Don't accept a surface image. That means steganography is working. Someone said to me, all I see is a human. I'm like, well, it's working.
this goddess is a fertility goddess, and those are bulls. And to get even worse, I want everyone to be prepared. If you just had lunch, those are not breasts. Those are bull testicles.
Bull testicles. Okay.
You call those Rocky Mountain oysters, Ethan.
Yeah.
No, people eat there here. So
and she is the fertility, so she's bringing in the fertilization properties, if you will.
There we go. And if things, of course, are going to have multivariate meanings,
Yeah.
they're going to have, symbolism could be a snake, water, and a mother goddess all at once. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a little bit of steganography for you guys so you can get the idea of what.
I got one more picture. I just want to show real quick.
Do it. I'm still looking.
All right, here we go. That was another good one.
There we go. We know that one, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen that in a while.
Venus.
This is the Venus.
Yeah.
Right.
And I even suggested that Venus might be concealing a giant cordiform face right there.
Oh,
Right.
shit.
Well, all those eggs coming out of the face.
Yeah, I made a clay replica for my advisor at FAU here before I graduated. I like to make little clay things here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you.
Just one thing I want to mention real quick. If they didn't have belly buttons on them, I could see that meaning a mouth, because there would be no reason to make a belly button.
Mouth or nostrils?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess they didn't have.
Doesn't that look like their face right now?
Yeah.
The nipples.
Yes.
Their eyes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. That's steganography, essentially. If we're right, if our guess that this is them, then that's steganography, guys.
That are acorns.
I'm telling you, I'm just pulling this stuff up, so it's like if it pops out to us, I'm sure it's a lot more different places. And that
So
looks like the
look at
face
this
that you
one.
showed on the head of Ganesh, right? It had the two eyeballs just like that head of Ganesh.
Yep. So this is a Buddhist tree of life. And this is one of those ones where, like, it's actually better sometimes, guys, with the steganography, with these complex motifs, to have them smaller. Now go ahead and look at that and squint your eyes a little bit for an old-fashioned squint image.
Oh, we don't need to, because the image is so.
Oh, it actually looks better now. Yeah.
Am I supposed to see a sailboat in this one?
No, I could.
Maybe, mileage varies.
It's like an upside down ET's face.
Yeah, I don't even think it's upside down, because this one might that's just the way they're depicting it.
Oh,
with
they can
the
even
neck
show in
and
the back
mouth.
of the head, actually. It could be the eyes and then the elongated
super
skull.
thin neck.
Yeah.
And they're super thin neck. And so through my research, it looks like trees, plants. I saw in the Taino, there is what looks like a Mesopotamian tree of life, which maybe
We're
even
doing a
going back to the
Rorschach test,
Nazca
that's the
lines.
mushrooms.
So that's that. So we've seen two good examples of steganography. There's likely others out there. How are we doing, guys?
Great.
We having fun? We're getting
Hell yeah.
tired? It's about time, right?
Are you good? It's up
A
to
couple
you.
of things on that one that you showed with the inverted nipples. There was an inversion of the nipples. That we have like post breastfeeding, or once you are done lactating and you start to have the retraction of the mammary tissue.
It's interesting that they are. It seems like you're saying that they're associated with the female creator and provider, and they're that corresponds with the teacher, right? Showing us what to do.
The tutelary gods, right. So that seems to be a cultural motif amongst humans. Someone taught us after a great flood. So this is in India. I'm going to show this one. Before I show it real quick, I had a theory that dwarves are just sort of our Western version of these beings. The metallurgy that could be associated in their quest for gold, it seems. And so in Indian mythology, they have the yakshas or the yakshinis, the female versions. And so here's a statue of a yaksha, and there, lo and behold, in the center of her arms and chest is a tridactyl therianthropic head with cordiform supraorbital arches, therianthropic nose, and pointed temporal bones on the side of her head. And just to show you in isolation. So,
well,
that's the Jasmalanji temple.
I got to point out the similarities between this and E.T.
Yo, I was going to just say, yeah, right?
And right. So what people don't realize is that Spielberg on Close Encounters works closely with Professor Hynek, who was in charge of Project Blue Book. So it can only indicate that either Spielberg or his special effects guy had direct, intimate knowledge, because even when I was a kid and we saw Close Encounters, we're like, wow, that's really real looking. And so now we have tridactyls, we have ET. These beings have necks that seem to be able to extend just like ET.
And another point is you're pointing out all of these midsections that look like their faces. Well, what if this is talking about the telepathic abilities that E.T. had, because his heart would glow as he was using his telepathy? Again, it's like he's talking through his chest.
Well, we're probably going to find something interesting. So did you guys hear about the llama theory?
No.
Nope.
So
I'm afraid of llamas,
the skeptics someone had suggested that a llama skull was used to fake all of this. Well, one of the first things I noticed is that the tridactyls have this concave indentation here, which resembles that of a mythological character in Japan called the kappa. So I identified this, and I'm calling it the kappa because it's a unique feature. On the llama skull that they tried to purport was used to fake all of this, it has a long sagittal crest that goes right through this area to this point that they were suggesting was a supraorbital arch. Meanwhile, the back half of the llama skull wasn't there. So there was no way to demonstrate the back of this. It was just a complete fabricated thing. In fact, a disingenuous paleontologist, even though I found a head in Artemis's egg, tried to tell me that was pareidolia at the same time demonstrating that llama skull. So this is the type of disingenuous behavior that conspiratorially you could suggest, is this being done willfully? Are people this ignorant or this paranoid that they don't believe things?
No, well, look, from my experience, what I find is people are not able to go beyond what they are ready to believe. So to make that jump, such a gigantic jump from what they learned all their lives into this realm of fantastic and global exposition or presence, it's too far a jump. So if
I know,
imagine,
that's why.
As Headless was saying, if the guy presented the paper with the mathematics, and they returned the mathematics to him saying that those mathematics had not been invented yet, so they couldn't judge them. You get the point. So
that's where we're at. And I should probably not get so frustrated. That's why I do try to focus on the biological science many times, because again, you're not going to believe these stories of steganography if you can't get past the biological, unfortunately.
Ed, speaking of biological,
yes,
you had mentioned eel, and you had mentioned because it Rolodex in my head. There is an aquatic eel-like salamander that has 3 toes. And
there you go. So yeah,
and I put that in the chat for the name, scientific name. If you want to look that up.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, I think the animals are going to be dependent on where you live. So perhaps even in the northern realms, a bear might be symbolic because the bear walks on 2 legs. It appears to be part man, part human. Otters too, right? Otters have anthropomorphic. They stand up on 2 legs. But yeah, the eel thing, as we mentioned earlier about anguillas and angels and this phoneme, please, you're going to start noticing the phoneme, I hope. Like we're like doing, running, working. It's all like, it's adding this emphasis as though we're doing the work of the gods. The alphabet was super interesting. So I suspected these alphabets are based on these beings. We can see them in various letters. The Brahma letter of Ka is a serpentine being. So even our letters A and B, I suggest is depicting these beings, with the original B being the head of the goddess. The original meaning of the letter A is ox. So I went back in time to a Sumerian word for ox, and it shows a triangular head with like 2 little antennas, because if you look at some of the decapitated heads we have, they have these pronounced cranial ridges, where horn and cordiform seem to have some etymological overlap. If you're familiar with Latin, cordiform, crown, these various things. What was their letter in Sumeria that replaced our ox? It was G-U-D. But they said you could use an A, you could use an E, you could use an I, but there was one vowel they didn't suggest you could use. And that was O for some reason.
So those sagittal crests that you're talking about, are there something related to what is believed to be on the head of a Chitahuri?
Yes, that is my belief. So keep in mind that as these stories are passed on from generation, the memory is going to fade. That's why when I look at that Jasbalanji temple that you said looks like ET, that says to me, that's an eyewitness. Whoever made that knew exactly what they look like. Later on, we start to see these exaggerated horns, and yet with the Tridactyls, and you can't see it on this one because it's really pronounced in the others, there's really just subtle horns.
Like you would see in a lizard.
Letters, one of the reasons I had this letter theory is that one of the skulls appears to have, and this could be reading into it, appears to be a, yes, I do know that amphibian. It appears to be an archaic letter A carved into the skull of one of the Tridactyls. But meanwhile, when you look at Victoria's body, their rib cage is actually a very unique shape, as sure as their face is. It is a near circular shape. The only thing that makes the full circle are those abdominal rib bones we spoke about. Otherwise, the shape of the ribs with the 2 flares at the bottom looks like the Omega symbol. And I said to myself, well, how wild is that? We have a decapitated skull with what appears to be a Greek alpha on it, and we have a unique rib cage that appears to be in the shape of an Omega symbol. It's very unique in shape. And this would go right along with my theory on theotherianthropic graphemes. The letters of the world are inspired by the religion, language, as we see with the morpheme. It's all inspired by them. This is all the stuff we've talked about and watched on history channels for years. And here are these bodies allowing for this connection. Because I recognized them, I was able to look at everything in a whole new light. It was a sort of awakening. So I don't know, what's the woo in all this? I don't know if there's any woo, but my goal is really I'm just trying to get the information from the researchers who might not be as forthcoming with it. So I'm here playing intermediary, doing my job, education through entertainment. And I'm just trying to do my own studies. And I didn't expect this journey, right? I didn't expect to kind of go all over the world in my mind.
Sure. And then who are the people that are the actual curators of this specimen?
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Sorry, now I'm lagging. No, excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the curators is officially the sanctioned bodies are under the ICA University. So they are not part of a government. They're still a university that is independent and does not have to bow down to the government per se. That being said, many of the bodies and the artifacts that were found with them have been sold to like Russian oligarchs, and maybe even Jaime Maussan might even have one in his home, possibly. So there is a push for repatriation, and I do believe that repatriation should be the goal of the globe, is to give everybody shit back. Give it back, and if they can't take care of it for themselves, then help them take care of it. So I do agree these bodies should all be together. But I also imagine a world where every museum is either going to want to set up a temporary structure so when the bodies come in, they have a safe place for them. And if that doesn't occur, I'm imagining museums are going to have replicas of these bodies. I went to a Miami museum just the other day, and how happy was I to find on the clay not only that cross-hatching pattern, but I suspect that their fingertips were also replicated. The fingertips of a tridactyl seen on Maria are not concentric circles like ours. They're striated lines parallel to one another. And so when I see striated lines, either on a great megalith, even in China, where you see these striations on the wall, which looks like some great machine carved through them, I can't help but think, is that carving also replicating their fingerprints, as to say, we were here. So I suspect there are some ceramics, some clay pottery somewhere, maybe even here in Florida, that might even have tridactyl fingerprints. So if people want forensic evidence, that would be it.
I wonder if there were any artifacts found along with these beings, or if there's any. And what were they? And what about any like petroglyphic or petroglyphs in the area that depict them, where they're in Mexico and so forth?
There is some allusions to petroglyphs, but really, if you want really cool depictions of these guys, you got to look up the Paracas culture, which predates the Incas, and their fabrics. The Paracas fabrics, they really have fun with these things. And you can see too, you can start to perhaps, even if you're fearful of the grays, you can start to begin to see that that's not the interpretation we had of them. They seem to be fun at times. I'm sure maybe there were some assholes too doing some stuff, but people tend to revere them, which is why I suggest our heart that we see today is still symbolic of their love for us.
Yeah. And
that's the shape of the heart as we know it, huh? That's the origin story, is what you're saying.
Well, that's my theory. Is that why?
Well, I mean, it's a good theory.
We can do our research, and you can come up with something that people say, well, it's because of some leaves we're shaped like it. But here's the problem: it falls into the same line as animal mythology. If you tell me an owl had religious significance, my next question is, why? Because your surface people looking for interpretation, we're all going to be like, yeah, a cat was there, a surface animal, they worship snakes, blah, blah, blah. But it's really all coming down to these guys. They have elongated necks. They have a benign, what I call a countenance. I use that even, I think, when searching for them. If you see a benign countenance, you don't have to necessarily find 3 fingers to know you found a tridactyl. Perhaps that is them. Look at the
I've always wondered where the heart comes from, because it's clearly not shaped like the actual organ. So, I mean, it's an odd shape, right?
But ready for this one? I'm going to blow your mind. You ready?
Wait for it.
It's not shaped like the actual organ, but what if I take this head and do this?
Yahtzee. That looks more like it.
That looks more like it, don't it?
Yeah.
What's the heart? And do you know that head and cup have the same etymological origins? Kappa? What's that about, guys?
Good question.
I always used to wonder that when I was younger, and it's like, oh, now we know.
Well, they're both filled with liquid.
And perhaps even something like this is, this is your white wine glass. What I'm saying is, and it sounds a little conspiratorial, but if these are the creator beings that everyone talks about in myth, I'm not making this up, right? This is other people's stories, not mine. I didn't even believe this stuff in 2023. Then we have to consider who these people are. The Maori called them ancestors, guys. I've been on film doing. I do my own show at 7. I'm going to be so out of energy.
Oh, shit. Right. Sorry,
but I have to give away one of these. I've been giving away. I've been making these little molds, so I give them away for fun. Nice. So you mentioned the heart. I suggest the infinity symbol. The plus symbol is an early sign for the god Ka, who is the alpha letter in the Brahmins, Hindu Sanskrit language, Ka. The ionic columns. The fleur de lis is a mother goddess imagery, with the top floor is giving birth to the lower floor. The paisley is likely a pregnant larva with eggs within. There we go. That's looks like a goddess symbol, right? A being. Where's this?
This is from Carthage. This is one of the goddess symbols they have there called Tanit or Tanit. And Tanit is pretty distinctive because it's so simplistic looking, right? And so even on more complex stela, they still keep this very basic shape, and it's not as advanced as the rest of their artwork. Well, what's funny about that is that they keep it basic, but it's also a site for what they call toffets, where they have all of these ashes of burned bodies. And so the ashes of the burned bodies are marked out by these different sites. So if you could scroll over and see some more, I think there's a definite crossover. See?
Oh, so here we go. So these stelas, when I look at these things, I always squint. Do not get fooled by the surface imagery, because even that, I see the being right there, that could have multiple.
On top of the fish.
On top of the fish. So what that usually means is, it means the lower half, in my opinion, the lower half of the body is fish-like.
Right. And you can see that figure now takes on a different sort of meaning in this stele. Is there's some sort of board behind it. It's not just one solid thing.
Human hand body.
You see the striations. There's water symbolism on top.
Right. And that's out in front of the
hands up is also a Ka symbol that I traced around the different parts of the world. So not only can I tell you who the aliens are, because they're not aliens, they're terrestrials, they're from here. They're the Naga people, and they were ruled by a guy named Ka, who became the first letter in many alphabets.
Well, we get our
There's
alphabet from the Phoenicians. Yeah, you see the eye up there with the half moon pointing down?
Mm-hmm.
Very important. That's also a very common motif having to do with this Tanit character. Right above the waters, yeah, there's definite deep symbolism. Now, what's interesting, too, is the Phoenicians gave us our alphabet. So this is the society you would be talking about that would have this linkage to these gods. And it seems like wherever the Phoenicians go, the religion sort of followed after them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in other phonemes that from that area that I was tracing is like yo and io and u and awise. There's this this god complex, and what happens is sounds change from region to region, so it does make it hard for a modern linguist. I've been using the AI, and like there was a word for eel, and there was a word for woman or something, I think it was, right? And they said there was no etymological relation, but meanwhile, in the middle of the word was the morpheme. And I had to correct AI. I'm like, oh, there's definitely a connection there. Also, the triangles, guys, usually when I see a triangle, that's what I call the isosceles maxillary plate of the beings. They have a bird or turtle-like plate that is frequently depicted in the archaeological record. If you're looking for these clues, look for those triangles. It seems like even like someone's cloak or robe could perhaps even double as a steganographic concealment.
Right. So
this hopefully will keep everybody and your viewers busy with, doing their own looking for stuff. It's out there. I can't find it all. People have already, at least a half a dozen people have already sent me stuff. Hey, what about this? I'm like, yeah, that's a hit, or other people who've been to Australia. It's like, I've been to that site and I never saw that before.
Well, it sounds like with the way you're talking about how the origin story of these common noises and language across the world kind of makes sense to me. Why? Because I've always wondered why the state of Ohio's named Ohio when you got Ohio as a greeting in Japan.
Okay. Yeah.
Why, how does a term like that, Ohio, traverse two different continents across many different cultures? It's a very particular name, right?
Exactly. Kappa. Why is Kappa in Japanese these creatures, and it's also cup and head? So I think what traditional linguists they're not willing to make that leap. And I've asked AI, I'm like, please, you have to stop quoting me the traditional teachings here. We're in new territory. The beings have allowed us, they have given us the permission to think outside the box and rethink the whole of humanity's history. Thanks to their DNA having multiple primates. Maria has chimpanzee, bonobo, human, and unknown DNA within her. Those traits that I mentioned of no lungs.
To the Chinese?
Yeah, that's the human. Yeah.
Okay.
I looked up the paper really quickly. I don't know what you think of the paper that just came out in March, doing over the mitochondrial genomics, and it says that it belongs to a haploid M20, believe. And so if you look at haploid M20, it's the Davidian area, which is Southern Asia, Himalayan, all that, what have you. But if you look at when that diverged from the fossil record M20, it's around 12,000 BCE. And if you kind of trace back, if you believe in all this other stuff, they say that the actual comet that hit the Earth hit about 12,900. So if there's an actual catastrophic event, then you would see this, area which had the Himalayas to be the highest point in the event of a flood, going back to the flood. And so you would have this isolation of an area where if you were in the area, you could survive if you were above certain.
If you were above in the heavens where the gods descend from. Right. Yeah. And so imagine Gobi, the desert of Gobi. And this is not speculation. It was full of lakes and life. It had a subtropical region. And this is where we're finding the Devisonians and the Neanderthals. They're leaving from this area. So my new theory is there was a central language. And if you notice, like you said, those floodwaters, follow those floodwaters. They go right into Turkey. They go right to China. So the ancient Chinese may have saved their civilization, create some sort of dam, and the water went the other way. And so you now have everyone who was in this Gobi region, perhaps a giant primate Eden, dispersed. So you have your biblical myths there of your serpent in the garden. You have your Tower of Babel. You have Noah's Ark, all what I suggest generating from this area. And how did I come to that conclusion? If you could imagine, if you will, using the Himalayas and Lake Gobi and just kind of go out with spokes from that region, you will see that they will lead you, these spokes, to origin places of languages. The only one that's a little different is the people of Northwest Africa. And I believe in the, you've heard of the bread basket? I believe in a yam basket coming off of New Guinea. New Guinea gets no respect. We always talk about everything in myopian. The Holy Land is the beginning and end all, and it's not. New Guinea had anomalous yams that somehow end up being native in West Africa and South America. Well, you can't be native. You have to come from somewhere, and it looks like they came from, guess where? Southeast Asia, and India. And what a great food to bring with you or even set up in different places for others, but a tuber crop. So I believe yams, sugarcane, bananas were all coming from these insular areas where they were probably able to not only protect themselves from primates, but isolate the primates because primates don't swim, but we do, which brings up retribution for those poor people who put the theory forth of the aquatic ape and got dismissed by blatant science, by blatant just bigotry, I could say, bigotry against new thoughts. And now we have what appears to be Maria, who appears to have the resemblance of an aquatic ape. So just another example how we just dismiss poor people. You know, all those alien abduction people that we've gaslit over the years, I feel awful. Turns out there's something there.
Indeed. Did anybody have anything else?
Yeah, we went long.
Yeah.
I have two more things. I promise I'll be
Fire
quick.
away.
You said something about Hiawas or something.
Hiawas? No, Awas. Awas is a rune. So again, going back to the concept of therianthropic letters, if you look at like Awas in the Semitic Yod, it appears to be depicting a serpentine being. And then in the king's tomb of Sweden, they call them high priests, right? Everyone wants to interpret them. Well, you're able to reinterpret things now once you've seen the Tridactyls. There are these serpentine beings in a Swedish king's tomb, appear to be doing like a cobra-like dance. So yes, the Awas, I suggest Awas is maybe related to Yahweh, which is some sort of aquatic god who may have even been yellow-green. I don't know. You know, I've looked, I've just taken these, I've done, I guess you'd call it folk etymology, right? Because it's not within the realm of typical linguistics. But again, it seems like the world's languages are a lot closer in relation than we care to admit. And so I can see why the Europeans don't want to hear that a mother culture came from East Asia and descended from the Himalayas to create the rest of our world. And again, the West Africa is an anomaly in itself, but yet near there is actually a Tibet there in Africa, and there's also a lake with the phoneme in it. How did that get there, right? And when you think of the in African language, it's all over the place. It's certainly definitely a new way to look at an example of a world culture and possible what they call hyperdiffusion, which again has been dismissed over the years. But the Tridactyls have given me permission to rethink this. And it should give you permission as well.
Well, we kind of have a linkage there too with
okay, little Crowley's buddy, huh?
Iowas, right?
So, right.
Holy Tridactyls.
Yeah, look at those cranial ridges. That cordiform shaped face, that tiny therianthropic nose,
It's the
subtle
same thing,
mouth.
right?
Very close.
It's pretty damn close. I mean, come on.
Right? I was saying you can see the ridges, like he's got multiple ridges going on there too, like you were describing the other.
Let me pull. Are we wrapping up here?
I just thought I'd pull that up real quick.
Yeah,
I was gonna pull up
a good one.
the
That's a
skull
good one.
so we can look at the ridges.
Sure. Yeah.
Bring
Yeah,
that,
we'll wrap it up
that
after
is a
that.
very similar ridge line.
And we'll see if we can spot the archaic letter A.
There you go.
So what does Alpha and I am the Alpha and the Omega mean? If we can agree that the Old Testament is a rehashing of beliefs, is the New Testament also a rehashing of beliefs? And the ancients, our ancestors, just wanted us to remember. I just got bit by a mosquito.
About to get Omega'd by it if it's got any kind of West Nile virus.
Oh my God. Better not. I have a pond in the back, but with all this Tridactyl stuff, I don't want to kill the frog babies.
Isn't that Alpha and Omega the beginning and the end though? Is there a different
Right. So if you look closely right here, there appears to be an archaic Greek letter A. The Greek letter A is inverted than ours.
I'm tracking.
And there
comes through the
appears to be a
Phoenician.
great slash mark also.
Which is the origin, is what you're saying, for those script for the Greeks.
I suggest that that could very well be the letter, and depending on time and place, or if they were concealing something, perhaps it evolves. So here we have the cranial ridges. This one's infamous because it appears to have 3 ridges. So if you've heard of like 3 horned beasts or 3 crowned basilisks, perhaps he's our man. Perhaps this is the origins of head worship and of shrunken head hunting. Perhaps it was just a misunderstanding of a myth. Perhaps these beings were spirited across the globe and maybe even hidden. And maybe we were meant to find them now thanks to a freaking grave robber. Because that's how history is. It's not clean and simple. People are complaining that there's no evidence of where these things were found. And it's like, well, it's not that clean, guys. We have the CT scans, we have the x-rays, we have 22 bodies, we have amphibious and other anomalous features that indicate that their bodies seem to come from a period of hundreds and hundreds of millions of years ago, which is why I put forth the theory that we might need a new clade, which I call Nagalomorpha. And I'm suggesting that these may be the ancestral beings of terrestrial life in general, because they have all of these features. And I'm reminded of the Tao, which is from the 1 came the 2, and from the 2 came the 3, and from the 3 came all things. So to my best recollection, there appears to be not only cultural evidence of who these beings are, but biological evidence that's indicating their grand importance to us. This has been Ed with the Constant Companion Theory. You can find me at Tridactyls on various social media sites. Live long and prosper.
Tridactyl.
Thank you for joining us. Ed.
Yeah, that
Thanks
was
for
awesome.
having me, because
No, that was a blast.
as you see, I broke down talking about this stuff because it can be very isolating. People don't want to listen, and it's good to like kind of get it all out, you know.
No, that was
And
great.
you see,
love
it was
the
not a,
Fascinating.
it was not a lion's den, so that
What's
you were
that?
coming into. It was not a lion's den that you were coming into.
No,
No.
I had no idea.
Yeah. No, that was great, Ed. I really appreciate it. That was amazing stuff.
Awesome. Thank you
Hell
so
yeah.
much for contacting me.
Hell yeah. Real quick, JJ. Well, no, that's right. Yes, it doesn't matter. You got to leave, but JJ, is it all right if we wrap things up? Can you still make it?
Yeah, I'm good. No, I'll stick
Okay.
around for a few more minutes to wrap up. I greatly appreciate the conversation, Ed. This is a lot of new information, but I like a lot of ancient history stuff, so I like these ideas. And when you say the Alpha and the Omega and stuff, and how that has origin stories and that's very interesting to me, because there's a very particular ancient alien cargo cult that I'm interested in, known as the Process Church of the Final Judgment. There is, they're amongst other things, a satanic ritual magic, ancient alien cargo cult, but the leaders nicknamed themselves internally too as the Alpha and the Omega.
Oh,
Yeah, that was their
Okay.
internal nicknames in the cult.
That's interesting. Nice.
and
Yeah.
you know, John the Baptist had his head cut off, and he also suggested, there's a greater person coming after me. And Christ said, I come not in peace, but in division with the sword to turn son against father. Whew. What does it all mean?
Yeah. Revelations.
Yeah, Revelations, where there was I saw like frogs coming from the mouth of a frog or something. It's like, oh, too close to home.
We got frog people around here. We had the Loveland Frog Man of the 1950s here in Cincinnati.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
God, I'm trying to kill this guy trying to bite me.
All right. Well, all right. We're going to have everybody, we'll wrap it up now. All right. Lisa, please let everybody,
Just Occult Research Institute.org. Check us
Okay.
out there. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
awesome.
And JJ Vance, you can plug your show since. Real quick.
JJ Vance, host of Operation GCD, most notably not the vice president. Appreciate all the Occult Rejects time and conversation. Ed, it's great to meet you. Wednesday
Great to
nights
meet you.
live.
Hope we
8
can do it
p.m.
again.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. That'd be fantastic, actually. A lot more to talk about here. I'm
Bring
sure.
them on Fridays.
Mhm.
That'd be fucking blessed.
Yeah, I was gonna say Nick and I do a Friday show at 9 p.m. This would be great to come on there sometime if you join us on that. We just do a roundtable discussion on Fridays, 9 p.m.
Okay.
and then Operation GCD Live 8 p.m. Wednesdays and next Sunday.
You guys are busy.
Oh yes, for sure.
Yep.
Between all of us,
Try to
yes.
be.
Yeah.
Try to be. Great conversation. I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you. Of
Awesome.
course, JJ. Of course. And Headless Giant, once again.
You can find me at Headless Giant on X and on Instagram and also on YouTube. If you have any occult paranormal stories, including Tridactyl experiences, I'd love to hear them.
Or Pterodactyl.
Or Pterodactyl. Send me your emails at headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. That is great. Ricardo, please let everybody know where they can find you and your amazing works.
Well, first of all, thank you, Ed, for this wonderful 2 hours.
Yeah, good to meet you in person here.
Thank you. Likewise. I really much enjoyed it. And thank you all that kept watching until this moment. As I said, you can find me at Ricardo Calvary 1 at X, as it is on the screen. You have the links for the Institute. Check our products. We just launched a new collection that is the Nuremberg Chronicles in 4 volumes. So it's 800 and so pages of beautiful work that you can now take and take home. It's an exact replica. I just divided in 4 tomes because it would be too expensive to make it all on one book. It was too much. So that's it. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this 2 hours, everyone.
Of course. Always love you being here with us, sir. And Ethan Indigo.
Peace, everyone. That was awesome exploration of the symbological and mythos origination and comparison. I really enjoyed that. And I'm on all the social media, frequently writing. Just dropped an article on Occult Research Institute, and more coming. So peace. That was great. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Ed, please let everybody know where they can find all your stuff again.
Yeah, once again, tridactyls.com is where you can find my couple of papers on my constant companion theory. We've never been alone. You can learn about why I believe these beings are the Naga and that their primary alpha being was Ka. And you can also find me at Tridactyls, primarily on X. I do a lot of groovy videos on TikTok. And I don't know, Facebook is an abyss and Reddit is Thunderdome.
Just one more thing, please. I found out there are at least 2 more accounts on X with Tridactyl on it. So
yeah, there's Nazca mummies?
Yeah, well, I don't know what is the at it, but I looked for Tridactyls, and you were the last one that I found at the beginning.
I'm at Tridactyls, so I should be the first one.
Yeah, but no, the other ones appeared first, and people might be misled. So I just wanted to point that out.
Really?
The content is very different.
What? Oh, the one guy. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but his at though is at Tridactyl SX.
Yeah, I'll make sure
I think you're talking about.
I'll include the right link for you in the show.
But yeah, mine's literally just at Tridactyl. So here's a funny thing. I don't know if we have one more story. Is that I went with .com because I do the fun history stuff, and I said, you know what? Leave .org for the official science guys. And a year and a half later, they launched Tridactyls.org. And here we are.
There you go. Awesome. All right. So thank you very much again. I thought that was a blast. That was a lot of fun, for real.
Right.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for joining us as well. That was awesome that we had so many people here. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well.
Bye-bye. Live long and prosper.
Yes.